This video is all about editing in Snapseed. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys? My name is Rafael Jans and welcome to another video. Like the title says, this video is all about Snapseed editing. Before we start, it's important that you download Snapseed. This way, it'll be a lot easier for you to follow along. As a photographer and filmmaker, a mobile device can be extremely handy in various situations. A lot of times we want to post on social media and we just don't have our computers with us at all times. That's where the cell phone comes into play. There are several different applications we can use to edit photos. One of those applications is called Snapseed. I use Snapseed on my phone as my main on-the-go editing application. It's able to edit JPEG transfers from my camera as well as raw DNG. Let's get started into editing some existing photos. Let's get into it. So here we have an image that I shot at Waterkan of fishermen on the pier during sunset. And as you can see, when you open up Snapseed for the first time, you're going to notice that you have a few presets here to choose from. Now the presets may give you the look that you're looking for off the bat. And if it does, that works and it works for you, awesome, go ahead and use it and go ahead and share your image. But I'm gonna dive a little deeper into the manual functions of Snapseed so you can see what potential there is in editing your image. So I'm going to click on the tools section here and then it gives me a bunch of options. Now I am editing this landscape in portrait mode just for the sole fact that I can show it in its entirety, the whole application in its entirety. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be straightening my horizon, and Snapseed does a really good job auto-adjusting the horizon for you. Go ahead and select that. The next thing I'm going to do is into my curves adjustment, I'm going to increase the midtones just a little bit over there, like about that, just to get more room to play with. I can't do too much to this image because it is a JPEG transfer from my camera, so it's not a raw image, just a JPEG. I'm going to be working with JPEGs today just because a lot of you may be shooting on your mobile phone, and that's okay. There we go. You can see when you hold your finger on the image, you can cycle between the before and the after. Next thing that we're going to be doing is going to here to use one of my favorite functions, and that is the selective adjustment. With the selective adjustment, it does exactly what it says. You can select a certain spot of the image and only adjust that spot. So I'm going to be adjusting the water, bringing some contrast and some detail back to it because I do think the water does have a little bit of a glare from the sun, and I'm going to bring that back. So here I'm going to be selecting most of the water here and bringing that back. I'm also going to select some of the sky and bring that back as well. A little bit on this side, and that's that. Let's cycle before and after. You can see it's a very slight adjustment, but it helps in the edit. Now I'm also going to be selecting these guys over here, and I'm going to brighten them up a little bit, as well as a little bit of a contrast adjustment and maybe a saturation adjustment here too. There we go. That looks pretty good right now. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into our white balance. And with our white balance, I'm going to give it that nice sunset look, just a little bit. Increase the temperature to 13 and just a little bit of a magenta kick to it right there. That's kind of the look I'm going for. And we will select that. Next up is the color options that you have on Snapseed aren't really there yet. I'm hoping in future updates that Snapseed does give you manual color adjustments for every color spectrum. But what you have right now is you can use the vintage, grainy film, and retro lux to adjust the colors of the image. My favorite is using the vintage color function, and you can see that you can cycle between different color grades, and this gives it a specific look. Now you can also dial these down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be using between teal and blue just to give a little bit of a teal kick to the shadows. So I think this is a little too powerful, so I'm going to drop that down just to about there, and also my vignette I'm going to remove, and that gives it just a little bit of teal into the shadows right there. And add a little bit of saturation to it here as well. Okay, next thing that we're going to do is go into the tune image function. And here we're going to add a little bit of contrast to the image, bring some of that back. Then we're going to go into the saturation, add a little bit of saturation there. That looks right about right. See what the ambience does. The ambience balances out the highlights and shadows. So if you use it too much, it makes the image look a little fake. So I like to give just a little bit of ambience back into it, you know, just so we can get a little bit of that realism. Go into the highlights. We don't need to drop the highlights. If we do, then we're going to make the image look a little too fake. So we know that our camera sensors can't really pierce the sun, so we're just going to keep that right about there. And I think that looks a-okay. The last thing that we're going to do is bring some detail back into our image. Since this isn't a full raw image, the JPEG is a little soft. We're going to add some sharpening back into it. Now you can always check your sharpening by zooming all the way in and then using the sharpening tool, and you can cycle between how sharp you want it. So I want these guys to really stand out, so I'm going to increase the sharpening right about there. I'm also going to add a little bit of pop to it, just a tad, not too much. And I think that looks okay right there. Oh, one thing I forgot to do is add a vignette. I like to add a vignette to bring that focus on the fisherman. I'm going to remove a lot of the outer brightness here. There we go. And that should be okay. Maybe increase the inner brightness just a little bit. There we go. That's good. A lot of the emphasis now on the fisherman. And I think that looks like a really good image. I would share this in a heartbeat. Go ahead and export it by clicking done. And there you go. Well, that was nice. Let's see if we can edit another image. So the next image we're going to edit is a portrait image. I showed you guys how to edit a landscape image, and I'm going to show you some of the portrait functions that Snapseed offers. So first off, you can always select one of the presets. I prefer not to use any of the presets, so I'm going to go into the tools function right here. So the first thing I'm going to do with this image is hit the portrait function. And what the portrait function does is it finds a face. So it automatically found a face, and you can see that it really puts the emphasis and center on the face there. And that's really good. I do like that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep that function. However, I'm going to maybe increase the face spotlight just a little bit more emphasis. Skin smoothing is already at 20. I don't think we need any more than that, so I'm dropping it just a little bit. And eye clarity, I'm gonna bump up just a little bit. There we go. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and check that off. Now, her clothes are a little dull. I did use a flash for this image, so what we can do is bring the clothes back out of the shadows here. So I'm going to use the selective function and go ahead and select some of her clothes, some of the dark spots of her clothes, right about there. And I'm going to brighten those spots up. There we go. I'm gonna give them some good brightness here because I would like to see the detail in those images. Even though they are in the shadows, I would like to see them. Also selecting the gold spots over here kind of highlights the color. Notice that you have to dial it really down. Otherwise you're gonna be adjusting the entire image, and that you don't want. So after adding some brightness, I'm going to bring some contrast into it. There we go. And I think that looks natural yet different. You can see that it really brings a big difference to it. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Next thing I'm going to do is actually use the brush tool. And with the brush tool, you can also make selective adjustments. I do like the feathers on the hair, and I'm going to give them a tad of saturation with the brush tool. So with the brush tool, you can just go ahead and swipe. Once you swipe, you'll notice that the saturation changes. I'm going to dial the saturation to 5 because I don't want it too overpowering. If you'd like to see your brush strokes, just hit this eye tool right here, and you can actually see what you're doing with a little bit of a red tone to it. So I'm giving it just a little bit of saturation. You can see the before and the after. Before and the after. It's ever so slightly. You don't need too much. I think I'm going to go back into the selective adjustment and make this helmet pop a little bit. Go into there, select that helmet. There we go. And I'm going to give it some contrast as well as some structure to it. There we go. And that just gives it an overall pop that I like. All right, next thing that we're gonna do is go into the tune image function. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the highlights and shadows, we're gonna balance them out just a little bit. And we're gonna use that with the ambience function. So by pulling the ambience function up, you notice it really takes away that moody tone of the image and it brings that brightness to it. And I like that. So I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit. There we go. So it kind of levels itself off. I'm also gonna add a little bit more saturation to it, right about there. I think that looks good. All right, great. Now by doing that, we've also brought in a lot of the yellow from the sunset there, and I wanna balance that out. So I'm gonna go to my white balance tool and just drop the temperature just ever so slightly. There we go, and add a little bit of magenta for the skin tones. There we go. That looks a lot better. And last but not least, of course, adding my little bit of a vignette to it, increasing the vignette size and lowering the brightness out. There we go. That's it, and go ahead and click and check. I think this looks great. I hope you guys enjoyed this image edit. That's it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I can't wait to see what you guys have edited on Snapseed. By using the hashtag RaphaelJantzSnapseed, I'll be sure to check out your photos, and I'll be selecting my top 5 favorites. Until next time, see you later. What's going on, guys? My name is Raphael Jantz, and welcome to another video.